Meet Daniel. He is 34. He works in logistics, makes $78,000 a year in Sacramento. He has been saving since he was 26. He has $60,000 in the bank. He has a good credit score. He does not drink expensive coffee or take lavish vacations. He drives a 2017 Honda Civic he bought used. Last spring, Daniel tried to buy a house. He lost 11 offers in a row. Not because he was unqualified, not because he was being picky. He lost because the houses he could technically afford, small, older, nothing fancy, were being bought by people paying cash, or by buyers who had parents willing to wire them a down payment, or by investors who didn't even need to live there. Daniel still rents. His rent went up $300 this year. Now meet Sophia. She is 41. She is a high school teacher in San Jose, making $72,000 a year. She is not Daniel. She is not a tech worker. She is the person teaching the tech worker's kid. And she qualifies for a program called the California Teacher Housing Assistance Program, a government subsidy, because the open market has concluded that a public school teacher cannot afford to live in the city where she works. Now meet Marcus. He is 28. He just got his electrician's license after 4 years of training. He can earn $90,000 a year. He is doing well by any reasonable measure. He looked at starter homes in the Inland Empire, not Los Angeles, not San Francisco, the Inland Empire, and found that a 1,200 square foot house built in 1987 was listed at $490,000. The monthly payment at current interest rates with a reasonable down payment would consume 48% of his take-home pay. Daniel, Sophia, Marcus, 3 different jobs, 3 different cities, 3 different income levels, one identical problem. California has made it functionally impossible for ordinary people to own the places where they live, and this did not happen by accident. Start with a number that should feel wrong. The median home price in California right now is approximately $860,000. The national median is around $407,000. The average California home costs more than double the average American home. To afford an $860,000 home comfortably, using the standard guideline that your mortgage should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income, a household needs to earn somewhere around $200,000 a year. The median household income in California is about $91,000. 9 times income. That is where the math sits. Historically, 3 to 4 times was the benchmark. The moment California crossed 5 times, somewhere in the early 2000s, it was no longer a hot market with a short-term imbalance. It was a system that had fundamentally broken its relationship with the people living inside it. To understand how it broke, you need to go back to 1978, because that is the year everything changed, and almost nobody in California has been willing to fully confront the consequences since. In 1978, California voters passed Proposition 13. It was sold as property tax relief, and in 1978, that framing was legitimate. Property values had been rising fast. Older residents on fixed incomes were genuinely struggling to keep up with tax bills on homes they had lived in for decades, and the political pressure to act was real. So voters said yes, and the law did 3 things that still shape California housing today. First, it capped property taxes at 1% of the purchase price of your home. Second, it capped annual increases in assessed value at 2% per year, no matter how much the actual market value rose. Third, and this is the part that gets underplayed, it made this protection permanent and personal. Here is what that looks like in practice. A homeowner in the East Bay who bought their house in 1992 for $280,000 is today paying property taxes on an assessed value of maybe $580,000, even though that house is now worth $1.6 million. Their neighbor who just bought the same style of house this year is paying taxes on $1.6 million. Same block, same neighborhood. The new buyer pays property taxes roughly 3 times higher than the person who has lived there for 30 years. Now ask yourself the obvious question. If you were the 1992 buyer, would you sell? Why would you? The moment you sell, you lose the protected rate. You have to buy somewhere new at current prices and current tax rates. The financial penalty for moving is enormous, so you stay. You might rattle around a 4-bedroom house after your kids leave for college because downsizing doesn't make financial sense. You hold the inventory off the market, not out of greed, but out of pure, rational self-interest. Multiply that across millions of California homeowners. What you get is a housing market where the supply of available homes is structurally suppressed by a tax law. People who might otherwise sell, to downsize, to move closer to grandkids, to relocate for opportunity, they don't because the financial math punishes them for doing so. Prop 13 turned California homeowners into accidental hostages of their own good fortune. And for Daniel and Sophia and Marcus on the outside, it turned the market into a vault with almost no key. But Prop 13 alone is not the whole story. The second layer lives inside every city hall in California. Most of California's zoning laws were written in the 1950s and 1960s, when the vision of a good American neighborhood was a single-family home on a quiet cul-de-sac, a garage for 2 cars, and a strip mall 10 minutes away. That vision produced lovely suburbs. It also made it illegal, literally illegal, to build anything denser in most of those neighborhoods. Apartments in single-family zones? No. Duplexes? Mostly no. A small unit over a garage? Until very recently, often no. And the people with the loudest voice in zoning decisions are almost always the people who already own homes in those neighborhoods. Think about the incentive honestly. You are a homeowner in Pasadena. You bought in 2005. Your house has gone from $550,000 to $1.1 million. Your net worth has doubled. A developer proposes a 50-unit apartment building 2 blocks away. What do? You go to the city council meeting. You talk about traffic flow and parking shortages and the character of the neighborhood. You use every procedural lever California law gives you, and California gives residents a lot of them, to slow the project down, bury it in environmental review, drag it through hearings until the developer runs out of time or money and walks away. This is called NIMBYism, not in my backyard, and for 40 years it won almost every fight it showed up to. The result is a state that builds dramatically less housing than it needs. In 2023, California added roughly 120,000 new housing units. Texas, with 7 million fewer people, built nearly 250,000. Florida, with half California's population, built over 180,000. Supply and demand is not a complicated idea. When a growing population cannot find enough homes to absorb it, prices rise. California has been running that experiment for 4 decades and continues to be surprised by the outcome. Now add the ingredient that turned a slow leak into a flood: interest rates. From 2009 through most of 2021, the Federal Reserve held rates near zero. Mortgage rates fell to historic lows. In late 2020, you could get a 30-year fixed mortgage at around 2.65%. That number changed everything. At 2.65%, the monthly payment on a $700,000 loan is about $2,800. At 7%, where rates sit today, that same loan costs $4,650 a month. Same house, same loan amount, completely different financial reality. When rates were near zero, buyers could stretch. They could offer more. They could win bidding wars on homes they could technically afford at those payments. And stretch they did. Between 2020 and 2022, California home prices rose roughly 40% in 2 years. Not because incomes rose 40%, not because the homes got better, because cheap money inflated what buyers could bid. Then, in 2022, the Fed raised rates aggressively to fight inflation. And here is where the story gets strange. Prices should have fallen. Higher rates reduce buying power, which reduces demand, which reduces prices. This is basic economics. But in California, prices barely moved. They dipped a little and stabilized. Why? Because of the same dynamic we described with Prop 13. Homeowners who locked in 2.8% mortgages in 2020 are not selling. If they sell, they buy their next home at 7%. The monthly payment on that new mortgage would be dramatically higher even if the house costs the same. So they stay. The market freezes. Supply disappears. Economists have a name for this now. They call it the lock-in effect. And it has turned California's housing market into a game of musical chairs, where there are already almost no chairs, and the people who have one are not getting up. So, Marcus, looking for a starter home in the Inland Empire, is competing for an inventory that barely exists, at prices that haven't meaningfully dropped, at interest rates that make the monthly payment consume nearly half his paycheck. He keeps renting. Here is where it starts to feel quietly absurd. California is the 5th largest economy on the planet. It produces more agricultural value than most sovereign nations. Its technology sector essentially invented the modern digital economy. Its entertainment industry shapes global culture. By every macro measure, this is one of the most productive places human beings have ever organized themselves. And it cannot house its own workers. The construction crews building the tech campuses in Silicon Valley drive 2 hours each way from the Central Valley because that is where they can afford to rent. The firefighters protecting hillside neighborhoods in Los Angeles are on waiting lists for subsidized housing in those same cities. In San Francisco, a public school teacher with 15 years of experience and a master's degree qualifies for government assistance to afford an apartment, not a house, an apartment in the city where they work. California has built a 2-tiered society, and the tiers are not defined purely by income. They are defined by timing. If your family bought property in California before 2012, you are fine. Better than fine. Your wealth has compounded in ways that have almost nothing to do with your professional choices and almost everything to do with when you arrived. If you didn't, you are in a different California. You are Daniel, losing offer after offer. You are Sophia, enrolled in a housing subsidy program. You are Marcus, doing math on a spreadsheet that never adds up. The median down payment on a California home purchase right now is over $100,000, cash, before you make a single mortgage payment, before you fix anything. For a household earning $91,000 a year after taxes, rent, car payments, student loans, getting to $100,000 in liquid savings takes between 8 and 15 years of disciplined saving, depending on where you live. And during those years, the target keeps moving. To be fair, California's legislature has noticed. Over the past 5 years, the state has passed a meaningful wave of housing reform laws. Senate Bill 9 allows homeowners in single-family zones to split their lots and build duplexes. Senate Bill 10 gives cities a faster path to upzoning near transit. Laws streamlining accessory dwelling units, backyard apartments, converted garages, have actually produced results in places like Los Angeles and San Diego. The state has also started penalizing cities that fail to meet housing production targets, something it was previously reluctant to do. These are real changes, and they are still nowhere near enough. New construction in California is expensive to build. Labor costs, materials, permitting fees, environmental review, developer impact fees, they stack up until a new apartment building requires rents of $3,200 to $3,800 per month just for the developer to break even. Which means the new housing that does get built tends to serve people who can already afford $3,500 a month in rent, which is not Marcus. It is not Sophia. It might just barely include a 2-income household with no children and no debt. The reform laws are real. The gap between reform and affordability is also real. And right now, the gap is winning.